So recently, you've probably seen a lot of talk and dialogue online around a potential GameCube remaster headed to the Nintendo Switch and some new information around which studio is developing said remaster. And while you can take or leave that particular piece of information that we will go over today, I do think there is a broader conversation to be had here around Nintendo's strategy with how they are likely positioning various different GameCube era classic remasters on the Nintendo Switch today, as in light of recent games that have dropped on the console. We are seeing a resurgence of some of these 20-year-old plus classic titles come back as some of the highest Metacritic review scored games so far, with Metroid Prime Remaster sitting at 95 and Resident Evil 4 that recently had a remake hit 93, in addition to some love for other Nintendo GameCube classics that have been ported over. And we also have to revisit the conversation of the heavily rumored Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, as within the last couple weeks Jeff Grubb has made some new comments around them, and we need to discuss where us Nintendo fans should be setting our expectations when it comes to the likelihood of multiple GameCube remasters headed to the Nintendo Switch anytime soon. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. And as mentioned, guys, today we are discussing the hotly debated topic online recently, which is the likelihood of multiple different GameCube remasters potentially set to hit the Nintendo Switch sometime soon. And you may remember in a video a couple months back on the channel, we had a similar conversation, albeit before Metroid Prime Remastered was officially announced and unveiled from Nintendo at the most recent February Nintendo Direct, around the rumors and talks online from various different insiders like Emily Rogers and Nate Drake, essentially suggesting that it would be likely for Nintendo to pad the end of the current Switch's life cycle with multiple different ports and remaster projects, and what system makes more sense to port over than maybe any other is the GameCube, because of the depth of quality classics that console had available, not to mention the fact that it was the last generation that Nintendo truly competed on power against the other guys, standing toe-to-toe, if not head and shoulders above the PlayStation 2 and even rivaling the Xbox in power. And of course, while many grew tired of the rumors and reports, we did ultimately see Metroid Prime Remastered make it over in a big way, with even enhanced visuals and lighting, not just a simple up-res, but even more love and work went into bringing that back to the Switch, and we are seeing it consistently perform at the top of the eShop charts month in and month out, and physical copies are straight up impossible to find at local retailers. And that was definitely a miscalculation on Nintendo's part with not just producing enough, but I think it speaks to how it's surpassing their expectations in terms of what it's doing in its sales numbers when it comes to the fan demand around that particular title. Not to mention, as I said in the intro, it sits at a 95 today on Metacritic, which is insane. So I do believe it makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to dive into their GameCube library of games to pad out maybe some of the lighter months, because as we've discussed also, past Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, we don't really know a lot of what Nintendo has planned. We know Pikmin 4 is out in July, but outside of that, there's zero roadmap or communication around first-party published Nintendo titles, and if they are indeed ramping up for a transition period to more powerful next-gen hardware, it might make sense to put their development teams completely towards that next console and have some more simple projects come over in the meantime. And now to first get on the same page with why you're seeing FZero GX talked about so much, it actually comes from a friend of the channel, Nate over at Nintendo Prime, where he is claiming that he has a source that has not only said that yes, this game is in development, but yes, it's actually being developed at Next Level Games, which is a Nintendo-owned studio that's responsible for Luigi's Mansion and many other titles, but they're not typically known for remaster projects or even racing games whatsoever. So there's definitely some question online because we can't verify Nate's source other than just that he says he has a source. But I will say that whether or not you buy into his particular rumor on it, I do think it's worth having a conversation of the likelihood of FZero GX coming to the Switch, because you may have forgotten at this point, but Silex Hunter, who was a leaker that has never been wrong, to be fair, and this person also had a track record of calling the Mario Kart 8 DLC Booster Course Pass before it was announced Bayonetta 3, multiple pieces of information around that, including the launch date and a specific trailer, as well as a Nintendo Direct mini partner showcase that was announced. They actually have the receipts for calling all of that stuff ahead of time, and they were the ones that took to the internet to put a cryptic code out there, and it was ultimately deciphered into "you got boost power," which is of course a reference to FZero GX. And there was then a back and forth with a fan that figured that out, and he said, great, I've really wanted a new F-Zero game. And he said, maybe temper your expectations a little bit, but yes, you were right, insinuating it might not be a brand new F-Zero experience, but FZero GX is likely the next GameCube remaster headed to the Switch. Now, what we didn't get is any kind of timeline, so we will have to wait and see with this particular update on a GameCube game, but it's yet another one that I think if you were going to give the series a second look and a second chance at a broader audience, you do it on the Switch. You do it with any of your Nintendo franchises on the Switch that you want to see if they can sell at this point, because we are quite honestly just at a point of success with this thing that you just historically do not see, especially in terms of software sales and the attach rate to a console that's 100+ million units deep at this point. It is absolutely the time to figure out whether or not there's some kind of interest from modern day gamers around some long dormant franchises, and I think that F-Zero fits that bill perfectly. I hope they do indeed bring it back. All it needs is a HD up-res and online play with 30 different players. Just imagine the fast-paced, instantaneous reactions that are required for F-Zero playing online against 30 other people. I think it would be fantastic. I definitely think it's the best installment in the series, period, and it just makes sense to see it sold at something. Hopefully that $40 price point that we saw Prime 1 Remastered launch at is actually a common theme for GameCube remasters, but even if not, and it's brought over at $60, I will still happily pay it. I am ready to play F-Zero in the modern era. Now, to quickly shift paces and actually update a couple long rumored projects that we've talked about plenty on the channel, and you may have noticed we haven't talked about it recently because I'm in the mindset that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is all we are going to get for 2023 in terms of Zelda games. Could something slide in at the holiday window? It's entirely possible, but the long rumored Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD were mentioned in passing a couple weeks ago from Jeff Grubb on the Kinda Funny Games podcast, where he was asked about that big miss on his part where they did report on a source that they hadn't vetted and shouldn't have went out there and done, and Jeff Grubb has since owned up to that and has essentially said that it was a bad call on their part and shouldn't have gone out there and done it. But while that might have been a big miss for him, you do have to realize that this is the guy that was talking about Metroid Prime 1 Remastered far before anybody else was, and doubling down to the point where he was putting his hair on the line. And of course, you never try to time Nintendo's release strategy, because he did indeed lose his hair from claiming that it would be out before the end of 2022, and they waited until February of 2023 to launch it, of course. But that plays into the conversation on how long Nintendo sits on titles. He's also somebody who has talked about GoldenEye very vocally before it was officially confirmed to be coming back. And so love him or hate him, there's enough of a track record there, and he's just an industry face for so long that clearly he's made connections as a gaming journalist with various different developing studios who are working on different projects and would likely have some kind of inside information. And his knowledge on Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD as it stands today is that he's always just heard that they're real projects and they're finished and ready to go, and why Nintendo is not releasing them is just baffling to him. That's his statement on it. And the biggest problem is just trying to time Nintendo, because in a year like 2022, when Tears of the Kingdom gets announced that it's delayed and Nintendo wants to have a Zelda game out every single calendar year, and they don't have one for 2022 and they need more time for Tears of the Kingdom, it seemed like it made all the sense for them to throw those titles out, and they didn't. However, one thing you could entertain the idea of that they may be doing with these games is actually saving them for the end of the Switch's life cycle to transition and pad out different months that we don't have major first-party Nintendo game support or games lined up, and throw those out during that transitional period. Or they very well could be launch games for the new Switch. Maybe they upgraded the visuals even further, kind of justifying the double dip on those Wii U ports if you were somebody who picked them up on the Wii U, and that's what they are ultimately doing. But I do think that a lot of how Nintendo will handle the GameCube library of games, regardless of which projects we see make it over or not, is in this port and remaster type of strategy, as opposed to them just coming out with something like GameCube on NSO this September at the Fall Direct. I think that we are much further out from having GameCube added into Nintendo Switch Online. Do I think it will happen one day? Absolutely. But I think that that will be on next generation hardware, and likely further into the next generation hardware's life cycle. I think for the time being, Nintendo Nintendo knows that a lot of these titles can generate $40 to $60 very easily if just given that little bit of love and care, modernize the resolution, modernize controls, put a little bit of work into these things, but resell them at that full retail price. And I think they know they can generate a lot of money and make a lot of Nintendo fans happy while we sit on the sidelines and wait for the new major 3D Mario games to be developed and something with Donkey Kong to be developed. There's a lot of moving pieces, and Nintendo knows the broader plan of what they are looking at in terms of release timeline when it comes to new hardware and when it comes to their overall software release schedule. So I am very much of the mindset that we will see many GameCube classics come over. I hope we do. We saw Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD. We saw Tales of Symphonia make it over recently, in addition to Metroid Prime Remastered, although Tales of Symphonia has some complaints around the performance and how they chose to port that game. But the point is that now that we are in that 20-year cycle from the GameCube's heyday, it is time to revisit a lot of these classics, and we are already seeing Nintendo do it in a big way today with certain titles, and I don't think that games like FZero GX, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess HD are off the table or out of the conversation. I think they are very likely to come at some point in time, but we will just have to wait and see, sit on the sidelines, and wait until Nintendo officially announces it themselves. And I'm hopeful that 2023 and 2024 will finally deliver many of these long-rumored games that we've been reporting on for what seems like far too long now. But I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, your personal thoughts and opinions around this story. Do you think that Next Level Games is indeed developing FZero GX and that's likely to come over as the next GameCube remaster to the Switch? Do you think that maybe FZero GX isn't real at all and Nintendo's not planning on doing anything with the title? And what do you think is the reason we haven't seen Wind Waker and Twilight Princess released yet? Do you think it is to pad the end of the Switch's life cycle and transition into next generation hardware? Do you think that the games aren't real at all and it's just bad information that's been circled around for far too long now? And bonus question, which GameCube games do you want to see brought over the most out of that entire incredible library of games, that many of which are in that 20-year-old period, which is just hard to believe? But regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around this topic. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.